What if I told you that the strangest night of my life didn't just happen to me? It happened because something out there, something not from this earth, chose me. You might laugh or roll your eyes, but I promise you this. Once you hear what I went through, once you feel the way my world cracked open that night, you'll never look at the stars the same way again. Because this isn't a dream or a nightmare. This is the story of how I was taken by beings not human, inside a craft not of this world, and how nothing has been the same since. It started on an ordinary evening, the kind of night so quiet you almost forget the world is still turning. I was driving home along a back road. No traffic, just the hum of the engine and the trees slipping by in the headlights. The moon was a thin silver crescent, barely lighting the sky. That's when I noticed the silence. Not just the absence of cars, but the absence of everything. No crickets, no wind, no rustle of leaves. Just nothing. The kind of silence that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. I slowed down, uneasy, and then I saw it. At first I thought it was a plane. A cluster of lights hovering low above the tree line, glowing too steadily to be stars. But then it moved, smooth, precise, without the wobble of an aircraft or the noise of rotors. It shifted like it was floating on invisible rails. My first thought was, drone. My second thought was, no, it's too big. The lights spread out in a perfect triangle, and the whole thing seemed to pulse with a faint hum, a vibration I could feel in my bones. I pulled over, turned off the engine, and stepped out into the night. The air felt charged, like before a thunderstorm. I should have been afraid, but instead I felt pulled, drawn closer. My eyes locked on the craft as it tilted, revealing its underside. A vast, dark surface, metallic but shifting like liquid, with lights rippling across it like veins of fire. And then, without warning, a beam of pale blue light shot down. It didn't look like light. It looked like water, fluid and alive, pouring from the sky straight onto me. I tried to move, but my body betrayed me. My muscles locked, my breath caught, and my feet left the ground. Slowly, impossibly, I was lifted upward. Panic finally hit me as I realized I wasn't in control. The ground slipped away, the trees shrank, and I was swallowed into the belly of the craft. The moment I crossed its threshold, everything changed. The blue light released me, and I crumpled onto a surface that wasn't metal, wasn't glass, wasn't anything I'd ever felt. It was warm, almost like skin, and it seemed to pulse faintly under my touch. The chamber around me glowed with no visible source, just a dim, living radiance that shifted in color. My heart was hammering, but I forced myself to stand, to see. That's when I saw them. 3 figures, tall and thin, emerging from the misty glow. Their skin was smooth, almost translucent, like porcelain lit from within. Their heads were elongated, their eyes huge and black, reflecting everything like twin pools of ink. They didn't walk so much as glide, their movements precise, deliberate. And though their mouths never moved, I heard them. A voice, not in my ears, but in my head, calm, resonant, speaking in a language I somehow understood. Do not fear. You are chosen. Chosen. The word echoed in my mind, both terrifying and strangely comforting. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice wouldn't come. Instead, they gestured, and the surface beneath me shifted like liquid, reshaping itself into a kind of table. Against my will, my body floated onto it, as if gravity itself had been rewritten. Straps of light, not physical, but bands of energy, locked me in place. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. They leaned over me, studying me with those endless black eyes. One raised a hand, long and skeletal, and with a flick of its fingers, a panel in the air itself opened. Instruments appeared, slender rods of crystal, floating as if suspended in water. One device descended toward me, hovering inches above my chest. I felt heat radiating from it, then a vibration that seemed to resonate with my heartbeat. Suddenly, pain lanced through me, not sharp, but deep, like my very atoms were being rearranged. My body convulsed, but the bands of light held me fast. Images flashed in my mind. Not memories, but visions. Cities made of light. towers that stretched beyond clouds, oceans on alien worlds, glowing with strange creatures. And then, something darker, shadows writhing, voids swallowing stars. I gasped, fighting to breathe, as if the universe itself was being poured into me all at once. The beings never spoke, but I felt their intent pressing against my thoughts. They weren't just examining me, they were mapping me, peering into every cell, every synapse, every hidden corner of my mind. I wasn't a person to them. I was data, a specimen. And yet, underneath the cold precision of their work, I felt a strange undercurrent, as though they pitied me or envied me. Then came the moment I'll never forget. One of them reached out, placing its hand on my forehead. Instantly, everything fell away, the fear, the pain, the light. I was standing in a place that wasn't real, yet felt more real than anything I'd known. A field of stars stretching endlessly around me, each one pulsing with life. And a voice, so vast it shook my soul, whispered, "You are more than you know. We will return." The vision shattered. I was back on the table, gasping, drenched in sweat. The beings withdrew, their massive eyes unblinking. The chamber dimmed, and I felt the familiar pull of the blue light engulf me once again. My body lifted, weightless, through the walls, through the air, until I was slammed back into my car seat. The engine was off. The road was empty, and the clock on my dashboard read 2 hours later than it should have. 2 hours gone. Just like that. I sat there in silence, shaking, trying to convince myself it hadn't happened. But then I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror and saw the faint mark glowing on my forehead, exactly where the being had touched me. A mark that faded within days, but never truly disappeared. Because even now, when the night is quiet and the stars burn just a little too bright, I can feel it, like a key waiting for a door I haven't yet found. The days after that night were worse than the night itself. At first, I tried to rationalize it away. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at the wheel. Maybe the silence, the lights, the missing hours, they were hallucinations brought on by exhaustion. I told myself this over and over, but deep down I knew I was lying. Because the mark on my forehead was real. And the dreams that followed, they weren't dreams at all. The first one came the very next night. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when suddenly the room shifted. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't awake either. I found myself floating above my own body, watching myself breathe. And then the ceiling dissolved, peeling away like smoke, revealing the same endless field of stars I had seen on the ship. A familiar voice whispered again, "You are more than you know. We will return." When I woke, hours had passed, and my pillow was soaked in sweat. Then came the physical changes. Small things at first. I found myself remembering numbers, patterns, even entire pages of text without effort. My sense of hearing sharpened. I could pick up faint conversations across the street, the hum of electronics I'd never noticed before. Once, while staring at my hands in the morning light, I swore I saw the veins glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with something deeper than my heartbeat. It scared me, but it also fascinated me. I knew the beings had done something to me, altered me in ways I couldn't comprehend. And then the electrical disturbances started, lights flickering when I walked into a room, radios turning on by themselves, tuning into static that pulsed like Morse code. My phone battery drained whenever I held it too long, yet strangers' devices would surge with full charge if I brushed against them. Friends joked that I had magnet hands, but I stopped laughing when one night every light in my house exploded at once, leaving me in darkness. That was also the night the visitations returned. It began with a hum, a low vibration, not through my ears but through my bones. The same one I had felt under the ship. My body froze, paralyzed, and I knew what was coming before it even happened. The room filled with that eerie blue glow, spilling through the walls as though they weren't there at all. And then they appeared, not walking through the door, but materializing from the air itself, tall and silent, their black eyes fixed on me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. One of them raised a hand, and instantly I was somewhere else. Not the craft this time, but a vast chamber of black glass, stretching farther than sight. In the center stood a column of light, rotating slowly, filled with symbols that shifted faster than my mind could follow. The beings surrounded it, their hands moving in gestures I couldn't understand. And then, to my horror, they turned toward me, as if expecting me to step forward. I don't know how, but my body moved without my consent. I approached the column, and as I touched it, the symbols poured into me like liquid fire. I collapsed, writhing, as knowledge, alien knowledge, flooded my mind. Equations, structures, languages, maps of galaxies I'd never heard of. My brain screamed in pain, overloaded, but at the same time, I understood. Not everything, but enough. They were showing me where they came from, and what they feared. Because in that flood of knowledge, I saw it again. The darkness, the shadow that devoured stars. An ancient force, older than them, moving across the universe like a plague. And I realized, they weren't experimenting on me for curiosity. They were preparing me, changing me, shaping me into something they could use. The vision ended, and I was back in my bed, gasping for air, my body drenched in sweat. The beings were gone, but carved into the wood of my nightstand, as if burned there by invisible hands, was a single symbol, one of the same shifting signs I had seen in the column of light. From that night forward, I was never alone. I could feel them, watching me, pressing at the edges of my thoughts. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses, shadows in the corner of my vision, reflections in mirrors that weren't quite me. My dreams became training grounds. I'd find myself solving puzzles of impossible geometry, navigating landscapes where gravity twisted sideways, hearing voices teaching me in a language I both knew and didn't know. But with the gifts came the cost. People noticed I was changing. Friends said I seemed distant, distracted. My eyes, they said, sometimes shimmered with a faint silver glow. Animals reacted strangely. Dogs barked at me, cats hissed, while birds would land near me, unafraid. My body grew restless, my sleep shorter, yet I felt more awake than ever. And deep inside, I began to sense a countdown. Like something was building, a storm waiting to break. The final confirmation came one evening, weeks later. I was walking alone, staring up at the night sky, when suddenly one star blinked brighter than the rest. It pulsed 3 times, then streaked across the sky, stopping dead above me. A triangle of lights unfolded, silent, watching. And then, in my head, clear as my own thoughts, came their voice again. Soon. You are not ready, but you will be. And just like that, it was gone. I stood there, trembling, knowing the truth. They hadn't finished with me. The experiments weren't over. They had only just begun. I tried to live normally after that. I went to work, paid my bills, smiled at people on the street. But beneath the surface, I was unraveling. The nights were the worst. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt their presence waiting for me, like a current ready to pull me under. I would wake up drenched in sweat, sheets twisted, the mark on my forehead faintly glowing in the dark like an ember. I stopped telling myself it was stress. Deep down, I knew the truth. They were preparing me for something bigger, and each visit was just another step. The strangest part was how the world around me began to warp. Time didn't flow the way it used to. Minutes would stretch into hours. Hours would vanish in an instant. I would glance at the clock, blink, and suddenly it would be morning. Once, while driving, I blacked out completely, only to find myself parked outside my house with no memory of the journey. When I looked at my phone, I saw 3 missed calls from a friend. The timestamps were impossible. He swore he'd spoken to me, swore I'd answered, but I had no memory of it. And then came the physical changes I couldn't hide. My body was different. Wounds healed unnaturally fast. A cut on my hand closed in hours. A sprained ankle that should have kept me limping for a week felt fine the next day. My senses sharpened beyond what felt human. I could hear the blood rushing in my veins, taste metal in the rain, feel the hum of power lines when I walked beneath them. Food lost its flavor, water tasted alive, and sometimes, when I stared at the night sky, I could see faint threads, lines of energy, stretching between the stars. I tried to ignore it, to fight it, but denial was useless. The real breaking point came on the 3rd visitation. It was a stormy night. Thunder rolled across the sky, rain hammered the windows. I should have felt safe inside, but the hum started again, low, bone deep, vibrating through the storm like a hidden frequency. The power flickered, the lights went out, and in the silence between thunderclaps, I saw them. 3 figures, standing at the foot of my bed, their eyes gleaming like obsidian mirrors. This time, they didn't hesitate. The blue light swallowed me whole, and I was gone. I found myself in a chamber unlike the others. Not organic, not glowing, but cold, metallic, and vast. Dozens, no, hundreds, of figures floated in translucent capsules lining the walls, suspended in liquid that shimmered with its own light. Some were human, others were not. Creatures with elongated skulls, beings with 4 arms, forms I couldn't even comprehend. All asleep, all connected by thin strands of light to a massive structure in the center of the room. I was pulled toward it, unable to resist. The structure rose like a spire, its surface shifting with symbols I recognized, the same ones they had burned into my mind. And then the voice came again, but this time, it wasn't gentle. It was commanding. You are part of the chain. The chain must not break. One of the beings approached, holding a device shaped like a crown of crystal. It hovered above my head, then clamped down, locking into place with a hiss of light. Agony ripped through me as my consciousness was wrenched from my body, stretched thin like a thread across the spire. I could see through other eyes, dozens of them, humans and creatures alike, all bound together in some vast network. Their fear, their confusion, their pain, it all poured into me. But so did knowledge. I saw their worlds. I saw civilizations rising and falling, battles fought in the void, entire species enslaved or erased by the shadow that consumes stars. And in the center of it all, I saw the truth. These beings weren't gods, weren't invincible masters. They were survivors. They were running. And they were using us, altering us, to build an army, to stand against the darkness that hunted them across the cosmos. When the crown lifted away, I collapsed, trembling, gasping for air. The being stood over me, its black eyes unreadable. And then, for the first time, one of them spoke aloud, not in my head, but with a voice that echoed through the chamber. It said only 3 words, "You are ready." The light swallowed me again, and I was back in my bed. But this time, something was different. My skin was burning, etched with new marks, lines and symbols running down my arms, glowing faintly in the dark. I tried to wash them away, but they wouldn't fade. They were inside me, part of me. And then, the real horror hit me. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't just see my reflection. Behind me, for the briefest moment, I saw them, dozens of faces, human and alien alike, flickering in and out of existence. Their eyes staring through me, as though I was now a window. I stumbled back, heart pounding, realizing the truth. I wasn't just their experiment anymore. I was a conduit, a bridge, and whatever they had begun inside me, it was far from finished. I thought the worst was over. I thought the visits, the experiments, the pain, they were leading towards some end, some final test. But I was wrong. Everything I had endured was only the beginning, preparation for what was still to come. And when the final night arrived, I knew at the moment I opened my eyes. The mark on my forehead pulsed brighter than ever, casting faint blue light across my room. My arms burned with the etched symbols that had never faded. The air felt alive, vibrating with unseen frequencies, as though the whole world was holding its breath. And then the hum came, low, steady, more powerful than ever before. The walls of my home trembled, glass rattled in their frames, and the ceiling dissolved into that terrible blue light. But this time, I didn't fight it. I didn't struggle. I stood and stepped into the light willingly. The craft was waiting above, vast and silent, its triangular lights blazing like suns. I rose through the air, weightless, until I was pulled inside. The chamber that greeted me was enormous, larger than any I had seen before. It stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with rows upon rows of capsules like the ones I had glimpsed before, countless beings suspended in glowing liquid, their minds connected in the great chain. The hum here was deafening, vibrating in my skull until I thought it would split me in two. The beings were waiting. A circle of them, taller than the rest, their eyes deeper, darker, filled with something beyond comprehension. They surrounded me, their voices pouring into my head in unison. It begins now. The shadow moves. You are the bridge. The floor beneath me shifted, rising into a platform at the center of the chamber. The spire of shifting symbols towered above, brighter and more chaotic than before. I felt the crown descend once more, locking onto my head. But this time, I didn't resist. I let it take me. And then I was everywhere. My mind stretched across galaxies, linked with countless others, humans, aliens, creatures from worlds I couldn't name. I felt their fear, their courage, their despair, all flowing into me. And beyond us, I saw it. The shadow. It wasn't a creature, not in any way we understand. It was a void, an intelligence born from absence, feeding on light itself. Stars collapsed wherever it passed, worlds turned to ash, entire civilizations erased without a trace. It was older than the beings who had taken me, older than their ancestors' ancestors. And it was coming here. The chain of minds, the network they had built, it wasn't just for study. It was a weapon, and I was its core. Through me, they funneled their knowledge, their power, their will to resist. My body shook, glowing brighter with every surge, the symbols on my arms burning like firebrands. The pain was indescribable, but beneath it, I felt something else, strength. A strength that wasn't mine alone. The beings spoke as one. You are not alone. You are us. We are you. In that moment, the shadow noticed. Its vast awareness turned toward us, and I felt its hunger wash over me. An endless void, cold and merciless, stretching across eternity. It reached for me, clawing into the chain, trying to rip it apart. For a heartbeat, I almost broke. But then the voices of the others surged through me, thousands, millions, all bound together. Their will fused with mine, and I screamed, pouring every ounce of myself into the spire. Light erupted, not just from the spire, not just from the craft, but from me. A blinding, searing wave that stretched across the void, striking the shadow with a force born from unity itself. The void recoiled, shrieking without sound, collapsing back into itself. For the first time in its endless existence, it faltered. And then, silence. When the light faded, I was back on the platform, the crown dissolving into mist. The beings surrounded me, silent, their black eyes reflecting my own exhausted form. For a long moment, nothing moved. And then, slowly, they bowed. Every one of them, lowering their heads in unison. The voice returned, softer now, almost reverent. The chain holds. The shadow retreats. You have done what we could not. You are changed, but you are free. The blue light engulfed me one final time, and I fell, not through the walls of the ship, but through the sky itself. I landed in my bed with a jolt, gasping, my body trembling. The hum was gone. The marks on my arms had vanished. The mark on my forehead no longer glowed. For the first time in weeks, I felt alone. Morning came. The sun rose. The world moved on as though nothing had happened. But I knew better. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still feel the chain humming faintly in the back of my mind. I can sense the others, distant, scattered across the stars, but connected. And I know the shadow is still out there, waiting, gathering its strength. But it will think twice before returning here. Because they didn't just change me. They gave me something else, something I never expected. Hope. And every time I look up at the night sky, I wonder if that was the real experiment all along.